Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where by now you know we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And my guest today is Jesse Cruz, who we've never met in person, Jesse, but we know a lot of people in common. And I follow you, and I'm really intrigued by what you do and how you got there. So I'm just going to say a little bit about you. Jesse is a speaker coach, and he helps people make a living by speaking. And there's a lot more we're going to learn. So, Jesse, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's fun to meet new people, and we've kind of crossed paths for a few years now, and we've never actually taken time to talk. So, thank you for taking my invitation and being here. So, Jesse, where do you live right now?
Rochester, New York.
New York. Okay, is that where you're from?
Yes.
Awesome. So, I'm going to listen for the accent then.
Alrighty.
And so can you fill me in and fill all of us in a little bit on what you do now, and then we'll get to how you got here. So tell us more about you and your business.
Yeah, so I am a professional speaker and speaker coach. And what I get the opportunity to do is to help busy experts develop compelling storytelling techniques from stage with my lead through story framework. What that's designed to do is to help the business owners and organizational leaders to generate more impact and income into their organizations, but then also how to lead confidently, lead with clarity, and lead with certainty because their ability to communicate is a way to really connect. I believe that we're all just one story away from radically changing our lives forever. We just need the right strategies and structures on how to tell it.
That's awesome. So it's for people who are professional speakers, but also leaders in their organization to just, it sounds like, learn presence and learn how to speak more effectively.
Yeah, because when a person is able to communicate a story effectively, a lot of times in organizations, there's not a lot of trust. And compelling storytelling actually rebuilds trust. It really helps the organization to unite, especially for teams under pressure. And it really helps to elevate the performance because people are united around a common mission.
Mm. Yeah, that's so good. The stories are what sell, really. And if you don't know how to tell a story compellingly, I'm guessing it's just, it feels more mechanical, maybe.
For sure.
So can you tell us how you got here, Jesse? Like, what's your background and how did you get to this point in your career?
hmm my background is I was an Iraq war veteran, so I was in the Army
Mhm.
for 4 years. I got out and was a youth advocate for a while. I did that for over a decade. And, I got my opportunity to speak at a correctional facility. Did that for a couple years straight, just volunteering to serve and was given the opportunity to really share my story because I knew that I wanted to reach more people. So I wrote my first book in 2019. And then I remember during the pandemic, I looked at my wife. I said, I want to help more people. She's like, well, how do you plan on doing that? I said, we're going to start doing in-person events. And she looked at me like she wanted to smack me right in the head. She's like, Jesse, the whole world is shut down. And just in case you didn't know. And I said, I know it is, but I just believe that we can still make this work. She's like, okay, but everywhere's closed. I said, everywhere but one place. And she's like, where's that? I said, the restaurants are open because people have to eat food. And so we'll do our first event in the middle of a restaurant. She's like, you want to do an event, which we've never done. You want to do it in the middle of a restaurant, which is not really an event place. You want to do it in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a restaurant. I said, yes, what could go wrong?
Oh
And
my
she's
gosh, that's
like,
awesome.
you are insane. I'm like, I know. And I said, will you join me in this insanity? And she said, absolutely. And
Oh,
so
that's so great.
we did our first event in the middle of a restaurant in the middle of a pandemic with my wife and I and six other people around a table. And we continued to expand on coaching and speaking and hosting more events around the world ever since.
Wow. Wow. So those six people had some sort of connection with you or at least accepted your invitation that first go round, it sounds like.
Yeah, so a couple of them I knew. So two of them we knew. The other four were basically strangers. Um, and it was interesting. I was like, man, these people who don't even know me are signing up. I couldn't believe it. And as we were building the event, I said, hey, I told my wife, I said, I'm going to charge money for this. She goes, what do you mean you're going to charge money for the event? I said, we got to be taken seriously. She's
Mm.
like, you're going to literally, this is what she said, you're going to charge people money to hang out with you. And I was
Oh.
like, it's like, well, we're not just going to hang out. We're going to provide value. And she's
Mhm.
like, she's like, well, how much are you going to charge? I said, I'm going to charge a lot of money. And she's like, oh my gosh, you're going to charge these people that you don't even barely know a whole lot of money for this event that you've never done? I said, yeah. She's like, how much? And true story, this is what I said because this was how broke my mindset was when she says how much. And I said to me this was a lot. I said, I'm gonna charge $10.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, that's way too much money. That's way too much. And we started arguing. No, $10. No, no. I said, do you think it's like maybe I should do like five or is that still too much? She's like, I think free. I said, if we do free, no one will take it seriously. We just got to at least charge something. And so when I made that first sale over the phone to a complete stranger, and he asked me, how much is this event? I panicked. And I remember my heart started racing. And then I was like, I should just tell him it's free because
Mm.
he doesn't even know me. And at 10 is a lot of money. And it was to me. And then I went back and forth and I'm like, nah, I gotta stand true to what I said. And I said, he's like, how much is it? And I was like, it's $10. And I cringed. And then the phone goes silent. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this dude hung up on me and he thinks I'm a crook. And then a few seconds later, he goes, oh, like just $10? Like, that's it? And I was like, dang, I should have said 20. It's the first thing that came to my mind. And I'm like, yeah, just 10. And then, he signed up right on the spot. So
Wow.
that was our journey into really creating stages and showcasing our ability to coach and speak and mentor business owners.
Wow. Okay, so I have a few questions. So you got to this point probably out of, I'm not going to say desperation, but there was a time during COVID, if any of us remember that. I'm guessing it wasn't that long ago, and yet it feels like a long time ago. Um, where you said $10 was a lot of money. You had to do something. There was a restaurant that was open, so you took advantage of a situation. You did you get your courage and your experience from your work with the prisons, or where did that come from? Iraq?
I mean, that's probably a combination of things that I've done, being in Iraq, being in the correctional facilities, but then also having the right coaching and the people around me. Because I saw what they were doing and I said, they're people just like me. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And being able to witness somebody else who was doing it really gave me the courage to have that belief in myself. And
Mhm.
then obviously my wife was super supportive of me, believing in me despite the uncertainty, still having that belief really gave me the courage to take action. But I think it really comes down to having, people in your life who want the best for you. Um, and that was a game changer. Was I had to stop listening to the people in my life who really didn't want to see me win, who didn't really want me to be successful. Most of my family and friends, they really wanted me just to stay myself and stay comfortable, and that's not what I feel like I was called to do. And so I outgrew a lot of relationships along the way because they saw what I was doing. They thought it was weird. They thought I had lost my mind, and I thought I had lost my mind too because I was unsure if this thing even gonna work. I don't really know, and but it created open doors for new relationships to blossom. And so I think every time a person takes an act of courage and speaks on a stage, I think they get more opportunities to fulfill their mission in life.
Mm. So is it the speaking that helps fulfill the mission, or the mission that calls to the speaking, do you think?
Well, it's the mission that calls to the speaking first, because without a why, you'll never know your way. And so having a strong why really is the foundation of impact in life.
Mm.
And during dark moments in my life where I was lonely, I was depressed, I was struggling, well, what got me through it was being able to express myself, being able to put together my story in a way that could be empowering to me and healing to me and brought growth into my life. And what it did is it gave me permission to heal and grow. And then once people around me saw that, it gave them permission to do the same
Mhm.
thing.
So you went inside first and healed yourself from the inside out, and then people saw that, and then you built your business from that?
Absolutely.
I've seen it tried the other way, as I'm observing people and just being, curious. I had a mentor one time who said, his acronym was KOOL, be cool, a keen observer of life. And I really liked that way of looking at things. And so as I observe things, I've seen people who try it the other way, where they haven't yet embraced their own understanding of what they're teaching or training or speaking about. And I'm sure you've seen that too at some point.
Absolutely. I've coached so many speakers and coaches and authors and business leaders, and if it's not tied to a mission that's
Mhm,
bigger than yourself, usually they just burn out, and
mm,
because they don't have a why. And so, my encouragement, one of the first things I do in the foundational piece when I'm working with someone to craft a compelling presentation that will change their life and their business is to really get into the root cause of why you want to do this to begin with.
mm. When you thought about that for yourself, I think I call it a calling, like a vocation, like a something that's pulling. How did you reconcile that with yourself? What did you listen to?
Well, first, as a man of faith, my
Mm,
direction comes from above. So my relationship with God is the most important thing in my life. And spending time reading the word, spending time in prayer, that's what guided me.
mm,
That's what gave me the decision, because up until then, I had been interested in speaking, maybe. I've been interested in writing books. I've been interested in making an impact. And I have a lot of friends who, still check in on me, who are still very interested in making an impact, but they're not committed.
mhm,
They send me motivational videos probably every day, every other day, yet have not made one piece of content themselves, right? Like they
mm,
haven't had the courage to hit record yet. And so
mm,
I don't think there's anything wrong with watching, motivational content. And I watch it every day too. But eventually, I think this person has to get to the point where say it's enough of consumption. It's time
mm,
for creation.
very good. Uh, how do you know that? Like, how does a person know that, do you think?
Know what?
When you get to that point,
Hmm.
enough of consumption, now it's time for creation. Like, is there just something inside that says I can't not anymore, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's like this tug, and I think every human being feels the tug at some
Mm,
point, and the tug is saying, now is the time.
mm,
Now is the time. And what happens is, I remember when I was trying to make the leap and follow the calling, the main thing that stopped the new version of Jesse was the old version of
mm,
Jesse telling me, who do you think you are to make that video? Who do you think you are to write a book? Who do you think you are to coach or speak on? I still hear it. Like even now, I will still hear that voice all
mm,
these years later. The difference is I no longer follow the bad voice.
mm,
I seek out the good voice. And everybody, every day, makes the same decision. What voice are you going to listen to? The voice of your past, the voice of your comfort, or the voice of like your insecurity, or the voice of maybe discomfort of growth,
mm,
the voice of your future, the voice of your purpose. And every day we make those decisions. And so what happens is when I was making that change in my life, is that the future version of me just whispered and the past version of me was just screaming. And
mm,
so because the past was so strong with all the problems, I could hear more clearly the past false narratives about myself that I have created and other people have created. And then eventually over time, as I started taking more action by seeking out the whisper and moving forward, those screams from my past turned into the whispers and the future started to scream. Now I follow the tug on the future of the scream and I silence the whispers of the past.
great. So I'm going to go back to the first event you did in the restaurant when your wife said, "Let's go. We'll be crazy together. We'll do this thing," where $10 was a lot for you. And when was that? Like, what time of the pandemic? Early?
It was 2021. So in
Okay.
New York State, it was still very locked down.
Right.
I think the restaurants had just opened and
Okay.
people were still scared to go in them. So I mean, you're talking brand new. It was like just going in, and there was not a lot of people in there. Obviously, it's pretty empty. But I just knew I was meant for more.
Yeah. You said you found 4 people who didn't know you. You had 2 who did. How did the 4 people who didn't know you find you?
So the 4 people who didn't know me, we were just friends on Facebook, but I didn't know them, right? Because I have people on Facebook. I don't know everybody on Facebook,
Mhm,
right? And
mhm.
these 4 um, on Facebook, it was really 2 people, right? It was really 2 people, and then they invited a person each. So it
Okay.
was 2 people that I was connected with. One of them, we were friends on social media. I didn't know him at all. I've never engaged in his content. He never engaged in mine. There was no DMs. I posted a flyer that my daughter made because I didn't know how to make one. So my like 10-year-old daughter made it. And then my
Wow.
12-year-old daughter made the logo. They made the whole, I had no clue what I was doing. I said, you're going to have to make a logo and a flyer for me because I have no clue what I'm doing. So my kids made it.
Nice.
And then I posted it. And then he reached out. Well, I had a few people reach out that I knew, but they didn't show up. And then this
Mm,
guy I didn't know at all. He goes, I'm interested. I was like, oh shoot, now what? Now I didn't know if this thing was actually going to work, and now I got to do something about it. And
yeah.
so when he commented, I was like, all right, well, I'll send you a message, and then we send a message, and then I get on a call with him, and I tell him about it. And he's like, oh, that's great. And then he goes, can I bring someone with me? I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so he brought someone with him, and then the other person was someone. Um, he was from my community as well. We didn't know each other though.
Okay.
We were just friends on social media. No
Yeah.
interaction. He saw the post. He said, "Yeah," and he said, "Can I bring my wife?" I said, "Absolutely, sounds good." And so those 2 strangers brought 2 people, and
Nice.
those people are still near and dear to my heart to this day, because they they believed in us when, I mean, almost all of our friends
Mm,
and pretty much all of our family did not believe in or support any of this at all.
mhm. Okay, so I have a couple other questions. What was the message that compelled them? What did you put up there? What was it that they heard?
I'm not sure exactly what it was. I think ironically, it was the worst and best time to do what I did. It was the worst time because people are terrified to step outside.
Mhm.
So, not really good timing. At the same time, they were desperate to step outside. So, I think it's just the simple fact there was nobody, and I mean nobody that I was aware of in our area that was doing anything in
Mm,
person at all. I mean, there might have been, I just didn't know about it. And
yeah.
so I think it was just they saw a glimmer of hope from a
Mm,
very dark time. They
mhm,
saw someone who really wanted to make an impact and make a difference and was willing to act without knowing if it was even going to work. So I think it's when someone shows an act of courage, it
mm,
inspires other people because I don't know if those people would have went out to a restaurant unless someone gave them a reason to go to the restaurant.
yeah. What was the reason? What did you say? I'm gonna talk about something or I'm gonna teach something? What was it?
Yeah, so they're like, "Well, tell me a little bit about your event," and I was figuring it out as I was telling them. So I was like, "All right, what do I even like?" I'm like, "What do I even say?"
Yeah.
I didn't. No one trained me on this part of what to
Right.
say. But I think the overall gist was, I'm really just looking to build a network of people who want to make an impact and make a difference in our
Mhm,
community and our business. And my goal is to help other people, become better speakers. My goal is to help people expand their business through communication, and I really want to build meaningful, deep connections in this community. And I think
mm,
that was basically probably the gist of what I said at the time. And they were
mhm,
like, "Awesome, let's do it. Sign me up." And so that $10 event, I remember when we were done. We have dinner too, and then I look at my wife, and she didn't know that I actually charged the $10. She thought I did it
okay.
for free, right? Because she's like, "You charge whatever you want. I think it should be free." I said, "All
Right.
right." So I went with the 10, and I when we were done, and I said I ended up charging them. She's like, "Are you?" She's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "Guess what?" She's like, "What?" I said, "We made $60," and it was 2 hours. It was like a 2-hour dinner or something.
Okay.
I was like, "So we just made $60 in 2 hours. That means we just made $30 an hour." I said, "You know what that means, don't you?" She's like, "What's that?" I said, "We're gonna be rich." Because
Oh,
the most I had ever made in an hour was probably like $14 or $15 in an hour. And I,
mhm,
I just doubled it, right? And so I was like,
mhm,
huh, I'm onto something here. So I
mhm.
thought the $60, I felt very rich with $60.
And it's really interesting because the feeling of feeling rich is probably more important than holding the cash in your hand.
Yeah, for me, it was proving to myself that I could create something that could build relationships and make an
Mhm,
impact and help
mhm,
other people and help
mhm,
our family. And so
mhm.
that was the first time I've been able, I had no sales background. I had zero sales experience, literally zero. It didn't come from that background. Always worked like a job or was in the military. I wasn't, doing sales jobs or cold calling or door knocking. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. So making that first $10 sale over the phone, I was like, wow, I didn't even know this was a thing. So it was a game changing moment for sure.
Yeah. So where did it go from there? That would have been in what month in 2021?
I think it was like August.
Oh, so it
Um,
was late. Okay, later in 2021. So this isn't that long ago. You've kind of built something here. Take me
Later in
through the timeline.
2021, and then I said, look, I look at my wife after that one. I said, we're gonna do another one. She's like, oh my gosh, here we go. We're gonna do another one. I said, yes. I said, we're gonna do it better this time. I was like, I learned some things, to get better. And obviously, I still have to call around the restaurants because not every restaurant's open. There's still
Right,
so much restriction. But I was like, if I did it once, I can do it again. And so
right.
I was like, we could probably, you know, double, maybe triple the size of the room. And now we can maybe
Mhm.
get like a private room. We were in an open space, right? So it
Yeah,
wasn't a
yeah,
private room, right?
yeah.
So I was like, let's get like a private room. And she's like, okay. And then found a place I could do it. And then I was talking to a buddy of mine. We were doing the same thing at the same time. So you were kind of coming
Oh,
up together. And he's the really one that inspired it. And he called me. He goes, I'm going to run my next one. He was down in Texas. It was a lot more
okay.
laid back there. He didn't really have restrictions like in New York did.
Yeah, yeah,
New
yeah,
York
yeah,
was super locked down.
yeah.
So he's like, yeah, I'm doing my next one. I said, oh, okay, cool. Tell me about it. And he's telling me all the details. He's like, guess what I'm going to charge? I'm like, how much? Because we both charged $10 for our first one.
Okay.
We both were like, this is insane. He goes, I'm going to charge more. I said, how much? He goes, I'm going to charge 97. I almost had a heart attack when he told me that. I'm like, I said, I almost had a heart attack at $10, bro. And you're telling me 97? I said, this is never going to work. He's like, oh, well, that's what I'm doing. He goes, you can do what you want. I'm doing 97. And I was like, thinking, I got off the phone with him and I was like, he's not like better than me. Like
Mm,
we're equals. Like we are
mhm,
peers in this, is figuring this out together. And I'm like, we're just the same. He's not 10 times better than me. You know what I mean? That's why I was like,
mhm,
I say that like I'm not saying I'm 10 times better than him or anything. I was like,
mhm, mhm.
I felt like we were equal in our skill
Right.
set. But he's
Mhm,
charging 10 times the amount as me. And I'm like, I don't get that. So I
mhm.
come back to my wife and I say, we're gonna do another one. And I said, we're going to charge a little bit more money. She's like, here we go. I said, we got to raise it a little bit. She's like, what, like 20? I said, no. She's like 30? I said, I think a little bit higher. She's like, Jesse, you got to stop this. She's like, what are you thinking? I said, 97. Boy, oh boy, that did not go well. That did not go well. That's all I'm gonna say. And she's like, you're not, basically, it's not gonna work. You know what I mean? It's just not gonna work. And I said,
Mhm,
it might not work. I don't really know if it will work, but I'm gonna try,
mhm.
and then I had a nervous breakdown at 10. I said, I don't know how I'm gonna do 97 because it was only 2 months later. Right?
Yeah, okay.
So it was like a small turn. I was like, all right, it's only 2 months later. I'm gonna 10x the price for 2 months
Mhm,
later.
mhm.
Um, but I added some things. I brought in, like a photographer. I brought in like some swag. I got a private room. I like paid for like the food. I had
Wow.
speakers. I had like a structure.
Mhm,
It was like 3 hours long now, so it was just
mhm.
more value. And it was $97, and we got like 20 people in the room.
Wow.
And my brain exploded with, this is crazy. I was like, this is crazy that this is a real thing. So,
Mhm.
um, it just continued to expand ever since.
That's so great. So you had success right out the gate.
I had, I mean, looking back at it now, I don't know if $10 was a lot of
Yeah.
success, but
But you got over your 0. It wasn't gonna be free.
at the time, it was like I was, it could have been, it was might as well been like $1 million. Looking
Right.
back, $10. There's a lot of things I did wrong. That first event, I left a lot of money on the table. a lot of things that I made mistakes on. The second event, really, I learned a lot. Between the first and
Mhm.
the second, I really leaned into the coaches that I had, and they showed me where I can improve and I can adjust and make some changes. And so making those changes really allowed me to have the courage to, raise my rates, but also provide value. I tell people, like, don't raise your rates unless you raise your value first. Raise your
Mhm.
value first, then you raise your rates. Some people try to,
Mhm.
raise their rates but they don't
Right.
have extra value, or they never raise their rates as they continue to provide more value. And so they're
Mhm.
disproportionately, valued in the marketplace.
Mhm. Yeah. So tell me who you're talking about coaches and mentors and people you follow. Who were some of those people? Would I know who they are?
I'm probably not. They're not like, like celebrities or anything
Okay.
like that. But they were just people that I knew that had been doing this and really we had become good friends, right? I
Mm,
built up, they were coaches first, but then they became friends and, they gave me support and they gave me encouragement. And I'm thankful for them pouring into me.
mhm,
And even investing in a coach was terrifying to me. I remember when I invested into one of my coaches, I literally investing into this coach was more than my mortgage. Okay,
mm, mhm,
and so I was struggling. I
mhm,
had no money left. I was down to 17 cents. Couldn't
mm,
go to the gas station. I couldn't go to the grocery store. And I remember just telling my wife, I was like, I can't do this no more, and I'm sorry. And I remember I just cried at the table because I was so embarrassed that as the husband and the dad and the provider, I just didn't have the money. And we just couldn't, I couldn't keep working with this coach and I was going to quit. And I remember crying at that table. And she sat there patiently. And she finally spoke up and said, "You know what, Jesse? I'm not going to let you give up on this dream. We're going to find a way to make this work." And I said, "You know what? You're right." And even though we had no money, I was working a full time job, raising my kids, trying to be the best husband. I didn't really have the time. I didn't really have many connections. I just had one or two. I didn't have the experience in the industry, but I had the will and the passion to keep going, even if I didn't know if it was going to work out. And so I
mhm,
just followed that calling, that tug that we talked about earlier. I just
mhm,
followed that instead. And it was so hard to do. And I
mhm,
think the more that you follow that tug and that pull that tries to get you into the future quicker, the easier it is to hear it and the
mm,
easier it is to follow it. And
mhm.
so taking that leap changed my life and was able to grow our business in a way that I thought wasn't possible.
How long did it take you to get to a point where you felt like I can do like, are you doing this full time now?
Yeah.
So how long did it take you to go from sitting at that table with 17 cents to feeling like, "Hey, I can switch it from a side hustle to the full-time gig?"
So it was 2021 when I sat at that table and I felt like I could have made the leap in 2023,
Okay.
but I didn't
Mhm.
because I listened to the old version of Jesse. I listened to the family members, I listened to the friends, I listened to all the people who had never built a business or never really made much of an impact. I listened to their opinion, and that was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made
Mhm.
because I could have made the leap in 2023, but I didn't. And so I spent the next full year. I spent a whole year out of alignment with my
Mhm.
goal and mission in life. I spent a whole year disobeying the calling that God placed in my life because I was so consumed with the opinions of what people might say or think. And then I stayed in that for a whole year because I was also fearful that I didn't have what it
Mhm.
takes. And
Mhm.
so it wasn't until the next following year of 2024 where I said, all right, I'm going to do it. And I did it and I was terrified, but I did it anyway.
You said you had hired a coach, so you were working with somebody during 2022 and 2023, it sounds like. Is that
Yeah.
right? And doing this on the side, it sounds like.
Yep.
So you didn't give up on your dream, you just didn't go all in on it till 2024.
Yeah. I knew for sure that in 2023 I should have went full time.
Okay.
I was just too afraid
Yeah.
to do it.
Well, that's everybody. I mean, the thing that I love about the story you're sharing right now is that you're not like the overnight success that people look at from the audience when they see people on stage and somebody on stage says, if you do what I do, you too can be rich. I got it overnight. Well, that's not true for most of the world. Sure, there are those overnight successes, but I'm betting you've had a lot more people relate to you as a coach and a speaker and a mentor because of that struggle in 2023 and 2024 or
Yeah,
two and three.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that's been my superpowers, being authentic.
Mhm,
I share my struggles, I share my challenges openly. I don't ever want people to think, yeah, you just snap your fingers and I'm on stages, snap your fingers and I gotta, I'm booked up. Snap your fingers and you can host your own event anywhere in the world too. Like that's just not how it works.
mhm,
And I think a lot of times people, they are portraying a false image. And
mhm,
I think it's good to show the struggle and the challenges along the way to build the character to get there.
mhm. Yeah, and that's what it sounds like you're doing. Are you still doing the dinners to get things going, or are you beyond that now?
I don't do that. We do multi-day events now. So like I'll use 2024 as an example. We did 4 events. We usually do 3 to 4 a year. 2024 we did 4. We had our Warrior Women conference in New Jersey that my wife and her business partner create. Um, and then which ironically is in like 3 days from now. And
Oh,
then we have our speaker competition, our Mike Story speaker competition that was down in Tampa, Florida last year. And then we had 2 international retreats last year as well, one in Italy and one in Iceland. So we like to travel too. Like our kids get to go at all these events and experiences. We really want to make it a family business, and our putting our children around amazing business leaders from all different backgrounds has been a great gift to them and us.
mhm.
And so now we get to host events. I don't really do the dinners anymore. But usually our events are anywhere between 1 full day to 4 full days.
Wow. You went pretty fast in a short amount of time because 24 was just last year.
It was.
So in 24 you did 4 events, you said?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. So when we first started talking, you were telling me that you were scared to charge $10, and that wasn't that long ago. And I'm betting this costs a whole lot more than $10 for people to do a 4-day event with you.
Yeah, I up my price. We're at like $11 now. So nah, it's especially our retreats. Those are much higher price points.
Of
Absolutely.
course. Of course. Are they all inclusive?
I would say a lot of them are mostly inclusive.
Okay.
So we take care of obviously a lot of the food. We take care of a lot of the stay. A lot of the transportation, the excursions while we're there. Usually people just kind of get their flight.
Nice. Yeah. Well, so tell me from the table in New York to Iceland and Italy, what tell me about your mindset. Tell me about how that worked for you.
Well, see, we have a passion to travel as a family, and
So
so
that's a why. There's a why for you.
yeah, we
That's great.
we some of our greatest memories as a family
Mm,
are on vacations, and
mhm,
so we had went back to Iceland in 2018. It was a bucket list place I always wanted to go, and so we went in 2018, and then my wife's dream was to go to Italy, and
mm,
so we went to Italy in 2022, and so we've already seen the country. Like we've already toured. We're very familiar with those 2 countries, and um, my wife said, I have visions of us someday doing a retreat here or in
mm,
Italy and Iceland. I said, me too. Let's do that someday. And then, so we went to Italy in 2022. And the very next year, we hosted our first international retreat in Italy in 2023 because
mm,
we already know all how to navigate the country. We've built up a relationship with the Airbnb host now that we still talk to this day because we're going to go back
yeah,
again next year. So we're
mhm,
there like every year now. And so, we're very comfortable with that. And then we went to Iceland because, it's one of our favorite places in the world. So the why is because we love to go to beautiful places with beautiful people and
mm,
make amazing memories. And
mm,
so that's a really great way for our family to bond. And I see a lot of times in business, people feel like they have to pick between growing my business and spending time with my family.
mhm,
Now, there are constant sacrifices that need to be made.
Mm.
There's sometimes where, yeah, I'm gonna be on the road, all right. However, most of the time, I mean, I'm at all my kids' games, right? I'm there for I'm home for dinner most of the time, right? And if we want to go on vacation, we want to say, let's how do we blend the best of both worlds? We can go on vacation and serve our people and show up for them and make impact and make income and still enjoy time as a family. Let's do it all together, not feel like we have to always keep them separate. So we like to blend how we do that together creatively.
That's great. And you're allowing other people to do the same for their families. That's kind of what you're doing, helping people speak.
Mhm.
And so tell me about the 1 day to the 4 day. You said that we have a 1 day retreat and then we have up to a 4 day retreat. What do you do in that time?
Yeah, so I'll start with like the 1 day event is my wife's event. It's her Warrior Women Conference, which is literally this weekend. So that's focused strictly on women's empowerment. It's a conference. They do breakouts, keynote speaking, panel discussions, focus all on women's empowerment and business building for women. So that's like the 1 day event. And then the speaker competition, that's a 2 day event. That's literally people showcasing their speaker skills. You bring in a panel of judges. We have, full media present. It's really great networking. Basically, you get to see people launch and expand their speaking careers live in real time at that event. And then from there are the retreats. Those are usually about, 4 to 5 days.
Okay.
And those are usually internationally, and those are usually done in beautiful exotic locations. Those are a little bit less teaching and coaching and speaking. They're
Mhm.
really more about relationship building, connecting, utilizing your creative gifts, masterminding, and then also exploring, right? Because we want people to
Mm,
have fun and enjoy themselves and, fill their cup back up. So it's a little
mm,
bit different structure, a little bit more laid back and relaxing on the retreats.
yeah. So when you look at your client list, is it mostly individuals who are wanting to be speakers, or would it be corporate people who are like, I need a break, I want to take my family on a trip?
I would say it's more individuals
Mhm.
who want to speak. Typically, there's going to be your authors, coaches, and consultants. These are typically going to be your business owners who want to grow in their speaking, expand their business, but then also they're family oriented usually a lot, right? So it's typically the people we attract.
Got it. So tell me about your books. You said books, am I right in saying more than one?
Yeah.
Tell me about the books.
Yeah, the first book is titled "Live Your Dash: Discovering the 8 F's to Freedom." That book was the first one I ever wrote. That's what really opened up my mindset to the whole world that I'm in now. Because I've noticed in entrepreneurship, it's the greatest gift and the greatest curse. You do one cool thing, and you're like, all right, how many other cool things can I do, right? So then you get 7,000 ideas, and so the book was the first idea. That was the very
Mm,
first idea. That was in 2019. I started writing it in 2017.
okay.
Took me over 2 years to write that book because I didn't know what I was doing. Once again, it seemed to be a theme. I had to figure it out on the way. So that first book, when it came out, was a personal development book. There was 8 key areas in my life when I was going through a tragedy that got me through it. And those 8 key areas, if I was intentional about them, they really helped me heal. They really helped me expand my mind. And I said, man, if this book is helping me heal, I know it can do the same thing for
Mm,
others. So that first book really was that was like my blueprint to living a purposeful life.
mm. Where did that come from? You were working with a coach then, or were you, as you healed yourself, what was your process?
Because I had gone through a significant loss in my life, I didn't know how to cope. I
Mm,
didn't know what to do. And the only thing I did was that I would pray and I would write. So I would take a composition notebook, up a pen to paper, and I would write every day. I didn't miss no days. I wrote every single day. And then eventually I wrote until that whole notebook was full. I filled up every single line on every single page. And then after I wrote it, I said, all right, I'm going to put this into a book. I think I have good content here. I was building out and brainstorming the ideas of how this could relate to people. And then I took that and then I took my handwriting and then I retyped it up and put it onto a document and, started rewriting it and editing it and expanding on it and, developing the concepts.
mhm. And then you just published it yourself?
It was actually picked up by a publishing house, like a traditional publisher. I had reached out to I forgot how many, and they got
Yeah.
rejected, or
Yeah.
we're not taking this, or we're not interested, or not even responding. I've
Mhm.
lost count how many of those came through.
Mhm.
And then some lady was like, I would love to take this project on, and so she did. She gave me a chance, and when she did, I said, "No, I can really help more people," and I was so thankful
Right.
for that moment.
You say I'm not a salesperson. You say I don't know how to sell. You completely sold that. You're a sales, no, I don't want to say it like that because that sounds like a traditional salesperson. You're a sharer of dreams.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love to share the dream that I have, and I think when people get to see that,
Hmm.
I think people just look at the dream and they forget before you actually get to the dream, there's a few nightmares you have to face. And they try to skip those. And
Mm,
if you can work through them and you can push through them, then eventually you will get to the dream.
mm. That's great. And I love that you're demonstrating. You're teaching by demonstrating because you're going first. It seems to me. And so you're not just telling them to do it when you haven't done it yourself. Tell me, okay, first book, any other books since then?
Yeah, yeah. I wrote my next book is Losing Faith, Finding Hope.
Mm,
That is a personal memoir of my daughter who was born prematurely in the hospital.
mm,
That was a real faith journey and a faith test for me. So I
mm,
share the story of her life, and that book was quite an emotional journey. And
mhm,
then from there, I wanted to do another one, and I thought to myself, how can I empower somebody else in this process other than me?
mm,
And so I wanted to write a children's book that had been on my heart for probably 5, 10 years prior. But once again, scared, didn't do it, overwhelmed, came up with excuses. But the children's book was on my heart many, many years ago. And I thought to myself, I said, well, I kind of know how this book thing works. I got connections, I got network, I got experience, I know what I'm doing like a little bit. And so I asked my daughters if they'd be willing to write a children's book with me, and they both said
wow.
yes. And so
Aw.
we wrote it together and got it published. I think that was in 2022. And that was a huge turning point for our family because now they had their own asset that they could do. And now they
Yeah.
learned how to sell their own book. And we did a book launch and a book signing for them. And we had like 25 people show up and
Mm,
did a book reading in front of everybody, and they signed the books. They made money. It was great. I mean, it was huge. And what that did, it really changed my life. The life. I think it changed my life. We'll see what it does with my kids. They're still teenagers, right? So it's really not cool yet. Maybe when they get older. But it really inspired my wife. She said when
mm,
she saw that they had a book with me, she said it did so much to her that she was so compelled that she wanted to make a difference and leave a legacy behind
mm.
too.
That's so
And
great.
and now her stories have taken off. She has the movement, the warrior women movement,
Yeah. Yeah.
and she's already done 3 anthologies. She gets 10 to 15 women per series. They all contribute. She coaches them up. She does a book launch up in Times Square. She puts it up on the big
Wow.
lights.
Wow.
She just did a book launch for Series 3 on a Royal Caribbean cruise in Mexico like 4 months ago, and she's taken this thing by storm. But she was really inspired by that children's book, and she's like, I need to leave a legacy too. And then she goes, I'm not. I was sick of being the only one in the family who didn't have a book. So now she's writing books all the time. She's gonna have more than me. So
Wow.
yeah, she's incredible.
Wow. Wow. This is great. I love that from not that much time, but a lot of time when you look back. I mean, you've been planting seeds for a long time, and to have the outward success you have now is not overnight.
Yeah, it's been a journey,
Mhm.
ups and downs. I know every entrepreneur faces it. They only want to post the highlight reel. They don't know the backstage struggle and the anxiety and the fear, the early mornings, the late nights, the missed
Mhm.
payments, the empty bank accounts. That's all part of the journey.
Right, right, right. So what's next? What's happening right now that you'd like to promote, or how can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, up next for us is our Mike. Well, we have a women's conference a couple of days away, but in October, we have our Mike Story Speaker Competition. That's going to be October 10th and 11th in Rochester, New York. And really looking forward to that event because a lot of impact and partnerships happen in that room. Relationships get formed, and it's a really empowering place for business leaders and organizational leaders to come together and really develop their communication skills and build their relationships out. So that's the main thing. We are looking for, we usually take, I think, 10 speakers for that. We have one slot open for that currently. So if anyone does want to inquire more about what it takes to be part of that event, they can feel free to, connect with me right on Facebook.
Okay. And then after that, I'm guessing you have some trips planned because that's kind of how you roll, Jesse.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have the Warrior Women Series 4 book launch will be March 8th.
Okay.
So that's open to everybody. So she's opened that up to men, women, families, right? So everyone is welcome to be a part of that
Mhm.
in March. And then in June, we'll be back in Italy for a retreat.
Oh, okay. And so is that something people can inquire about if they want to find out more?
Absolutely. You can feel free to just send me a message on social media.
Awesome. Well, Jesse, is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share?
Well, I just want to say thank you for your time and your intentionality to ask not only just really important questions, but the follow up questions. I can tell you're a great listener and really care
Mm,
passionately. So thank you.
you're welcome. It is my pleasure. I believe that connection is one of my non-negotiables. And if we don't learn how to truly connect with people, we're not really being real. And my acronym is radical, energized, authentic, and learning focused. And in that kind of space, you said earlier you outgrew some of your relationships. It's simply because the energy wasn't the same, it sounds like. And we
Absolutely.
we connect. I think we attract who we are, not what we want. And so
Mhm.
if we're in that space, it would make sense that some of the people who really weren't uh, mm, willing maybe to do the work you were doing on yourself would fall away.
Absolutely. It's part of it.
Yeah, it's the process, isn't it?
Hmm.
And as they fall away, they make room for other people who are more in alignment, as you said. You said earlier you were out of alignment for a while, but finding that alignment, and I love that you shared your faith journey too. Um, everything's possible if we keep our eyes where we know they need to be.
Yes, for sure.
So everybody reach out to Jesse if you're interested in learning more or getting on a stage, learning more about speaking, or taking a fun trip to Italy next year. And as always, everybody, find a way this week to get real, and we'll talk to you again. Thank you. Stop recording, Jesse.